First of all, thank you very much for attending Pulse this year. This has been a great event over the last couple of years, and just the energy and enthusiasm that's been kind of coursing through this building over the last couple of days has been fantastic. Just a quick show of hands. Who in the audience was at Pulse 2 years ago? Yes, I see a couple of people. All right, very good. So thank you for coming 2 years ago. Thanks for coming this year. Hopefully you also attended last year. But what's amazing, and some of you may have heard these numbers, but 2 years ago at the first Pulse event, we had 200 attendees. This year we have 2,000 attendees. So we've grown by a factor of 10x in 2 years. And it wouldn't surprise me if a couple of years from now, we grow by another factor of 10, and we've got 20,000 or 30,000 attendees. To me, it's very similar to the trajectory that Dreamforce has had. This is an event that the Salesforce puts on every year. If you go back a decade ago, Dreamforce only had a couple of thousand people attend. Now, they have 50,000, 100,000 people go, and they take over all of downtown San Francisco. And it's this kind of industry-defining, iconic event. And Pulse is going through that same trajectory. So as small and as intimate as it felt a couple of years ago, this is actually going to feel very small a few years from now as this industry continues to grow and as this customer success movement starts to really take hold. So that's a good segue into our panel, which is titled the Ever-Expanding, Ever-Growing Role of the Chief Customer Officer. And this is a very timely topic, and it's one that's near and dear to all of our hearts for a couple of reasons. One is that there's just increasing recognition that the Chief Customer Officer is one of, if not the key leader inside of a company. Number two, is the fact that customer success equals company success. And please feel free to tweet that. I'm going to repeat it. Customer success equals company success. You cannot have a successful company without successful customers. The two are inextricably linked together. And when you consider the fact that 90% of a company's revenue comes from their installed base, you have to arm the customer success organization and the CCO with the resources and capabilities to manage the impact that they're having. And so this is a period where the role of customer success and the breadth and the influence of the Chief Customer Officer is expanding right before our eyes. So we're very lucky to have four great panelists who I'm going to introduce in 1 second, but I want to make one final point, and I'm going to echo something that Nick said this morning in his opening comments. When we typically hire a CEO, the normal profile you look for is somebody that comes out of sales, comes out of marketing, comes out of product management. Going forward, it wouldn't surprise me if the next generation of great CEOs come out of customer success organizations or were CCOs in a past life. So don't be surprised if you see one of our four panelists here become a CEO in their next job. So with that, let me ask the four panelists to come up on stage here. We have, actually, why don't you guys come grab your seats? So immediately to my left, we have Mary Poppin, one of the great names in history, let alone business, as the global head of Chief Customer Officer of SAP. We have Eric Kelleher, head of Customer Success at LinkedIn. We have Diane Majors, head of Customer Success at AT&T. And finally, we have John Hernstein, head of Customer Success at Box, who also has a singing career ahead of him. If you saw him perform in the Gainsight video, he has a great voice. So thank you guys for coming. What I'd like to start with is if each of you could just spend a minute introducing yourselves, describe your role at the company, what customer success entails, the functions that you oversee, and I think that'll provide context for everybody for how customer success is defined at each of your company. So Mary, I'll hand it off to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Roger. Can you guys hear me okay? So in case you were wondering, I married into the name. I didn't grow up as Mary Poppin. I love the jokes, so you can bring it on.
Thank you. You're a good sport. Yeah. Thank you.
So I run Innovation Enablement, SAP SuccessFactors, and essentially my role is to define, measure, and enable successful customer journey, across the board. So we have about 500 professionals globally dedicated to customer success. This really is made up by value engineering, value realization, customer engagement, which is strategic account management, and our technical CSM team. So overall, it makes up an entire engagement model that hopefully we'll get a chance to talk a little bit more about. So great to see you all.
Great. Eric?
Thanks. I run the global customer success function for LinkedIn, focusing on talent solutions, which is our talent and recruiting products. Our mission for Talent Solutions is to connect the worldwide professional workforce with economic opportunity. As my 13-year-old daughter describes it, we help people find jobs. And so for us, for customer success, what we really measure is how successful are we doing at helping our customers use our products to hire members in the LinkedIn database. And so our metrics are really wrapped around our success in helping people find jobs.
Great. Diane?
Thanks. Yeah. I'm part of a team that really helps to kind of helicopter up, if you will, over the organization and enable and really orchestrate all the activities that we put together to enable our customers, everything from application development to our sales team to our support team, because we really feel like orchestrating all those pieces and parts delivers the best experience. So we really try to enable and empower our associates. So that's most of our role as an organization. We have about 50 that are considered kind of customer experience team, but we try to make every single associate at AT&T part of our customer experience team.
And John?
Yes, so I'm responsible for the customer success organization at Box, which is sort of a shorthand for all of the post-sale service teams that we have. And that's, I think, fairly common to kind of put that umbrella term over it. For us at Box, that basically means our consulting organization, which does upfront implementations, our CSMs, our customer advisors, our user services, or what's typically referred to as a support team. Those are all of our customer-facing functions. And then we also have some internal teams that focus on productivity, operations, and retention initiatives.
Great. Well, thanks again, guys. Really appreciate it. We have an absolute all-star panel here, and I think we as a group are going to benefit from your wisdom. Let's actually start with a really simple softball question and continue the baseball analogy that's going on today. You know, the title of this panel is the ever-expanding, ever-growing role of the Chief Customer Officer. If you had to point to one thing or two things that have changed over the past year as your role has expanded or grown, what would those one or two things be? Mary, you want to take us away?
So I think a couple of years ago, it was really all about bringing insight to the functions, bringing the voice of the customer to the organization. And I think over the last couple of years, what's happened is a transformation of who's going to make sure that those changes and that feedback is executed on. And so the role has really evolved into one of insight and execution. And I would say that's probably the biggest change I've seen. I think from a measurement perspective, that has also grown significantly. We're recognizing that we need to measure not only our customer success, but also our business value and tie those things together so we get investment in our people to continue to deliver for our customers, but also measure through the customer lens and again, link those two things.
That's great. And I think one of the metrics you opened with, that in 2 years, the attendance at this event has increased by 10x, is pretty awesome. And I think to me that's reflective of a broader theme that we're seeing, that the industry overall is really, it's bringing customer success as a mainstream theme and profession into industry right now. And it's really a realization by companies that as you transition to a subscription-based economy, what you sell today is kind of irrelevant. It's what you renew of that next year and the year following and for the 10 years following that. And so customer success as a theme is becoming more and more critical and more important to companies as they realize building that sustainable annuity is paramount. And I think a proxy for the attendees here is we see something similar. One of the ways that we look at this is we manage and track and post jobs within our products. And we've seen very similar metrics, over a 10x growth in the number of customer success jobs existing in the overall jobs database over that same period of time. So we really see that this is becoming a mainstream profession, and conferences like this where professionals can come together to share experiences as we evolve and create this new profession are really powerful.
Yeah, we all need that group therapy because we're all trying to do something that's new, right? So I would echo what Mary said. A lot of it is we kind of move from the find and fix, and it's all about the voice of customer and finding things to move, to really, we call it kind of our product. Our product is customer and employee engagement. So we're really moving from some of the things that we've made huge changes on and kind of getting that rhythm in an organization to now what do we do? Teaching things like human-centered design and really using that same approach we did on customers to associates and getting them engaged and involved because we know there's a big correlation there. So that's what we see growing from the practice and the profession of customer experience. And I think there's a lot more people who are looking to kind of helicopter up, as I called it again, to kind of look across the organization. There's very rare organizations anywhere that have that ability to kind of thread through, and that's really where their customer experience happens, is in those handoffs and getting people to kind of play in the same sandbox, if you will. So that's also a challenge, but also what we see coming ahead is how do we enable ourselves as professionals to do that.
So I think for me, what I've seen, and I don't know if it's just the last year, I've been in this role for about 4 years now. I think it's two big things. One is the sort of transition from art to science, and the other is from defense to offense. And what I mean by that is, I think when I first started in this role, the role of the CSM, or what we used to call a client service associate, was very sort of fuzzy and touchy-feely, and it was about the relationship and delighting the customer, and those were the terms that we used, right? And I think if you look at it today, it's much more, what's the science of retention and expansion and so forth? What's the data? What are the tools that we use? How do you get repeatable processes and so forth? So there's still a lot of art in there. There's still a lot of the art of the relationship and the relationship building, but there's also a lot of science kind of coming into this role. So I think that's the first big thing. The second big thing is this move from what I sort of think of as defense to offense, which is going from thinking of your function as churn prevention to how to actually help grow these accounts, right? And I think these things all start as this very defensive kind of a function. Like, we just sold this customer, don't screw it up, and now it's turning into, we got this customer, help us make it bigger.
John, let me actually stay with you. You know, Box has done a uniquely good job at talking about some of the metrics that you guys use to measure the success of the business, around upsell and renewals. And I assume, you've had this role for 4 years, so Box obviously embraced the strategic importance of customer success at an early time. How did you mobilize the whole organization to do that? And what were some of the lessons learned in that process? And Eric, I'm going to go to you because LinkedIn's a 10-year-old company. You just took on this role a year ago, so that really happened, it sounds like, at year 9 of LinkedIn. And so there's an interesting contrast between the two. And so I'd love John, if you could just start out with kind of describing how you did it at an early stage.
Yeah, so the company's 10 years old, and so when I joined, a lot of these things, at least the ideas for these things, were already in place. We already had a support team, we already had a client services team, and thanks to the people at Box who started those things, what we did when I joined was just try to unify them under one umbrella, which is this idea of all the post-sale services, all thinking about one thing, which is how do we make our customers successful with our product? And the definition of that is how do we make sure they get value out of the product, right? They're giving us money, we want to make sure they get value. So that's sort of where the idea started. And I would say I'm pretty lucky from an executive sponsorship standpoint in that my boss and our CEO have never said to me, John, you need to find a way to spend less money in serving our customers. That's never been an objective for us. And even now as a public company, we have to be more thoughtful about how we spend money and so forth. But I've never been asked to reduce the way we spend or to get more efficient. I mean, there's an efficiency element, right? But it's not a big driver. The driver has always been make our customers wildly successful with our product, right? And I think our organization has helped figure out what metrics go along with that. There's some financial modeling metrics that are used, like the overall retention metric that we use as a company that we kind of feed into. But the support, honestly, has always been there, at least as long as I've been there. We've been just always a very customer-centric company. That's
great. So Eric, maybe going to you. So what happened at LinkedIn over the last couple of years where Jeff or Reed or somebody else said, all right, we need somebody like Eric to come in here and mobilize this company around customer success and make sure this is a corporate priority on par with sales and marketing and product and the other things that have really driven LinkedIn's success historically?
It's actually a great story. The Office of Customer Success did not exist until a year ago at LinkedIn. So my joining was really at a time when the company had realized it was time to formalize customer success as a program and a team and a theme for the company overall. And really what it reflected is, and John spoke to the transition from defensive to offensive, the real impetus behind it was in 2013, a realization that as the company approached a $2 billion run rate, and had mobilized very successfully around sales and growth, the amount that was bleeding in churn was starting to be a significant dollar number. And it was time for the company to really realize how to rally around ensuring all customers are being successful and we're not just growing healthy customers. Initially the impetus was, you could call it defensive by that lens, is how do we mitigate churn? But what we found in the year and a half since we started understanding that is that we started doing things like running Net Promoter Score surveys and hearing back from our customers that the experience of being a customer isn't always great, and it reflects the fact that we hadn't mobilized around ensuring their success. And so in just a short time frame, in just a year and a half really since we've been thinking about customer success thematically, we realized that there is significant offensive value in establishing a world-class organization that creates raving fans in our customer base. And by having raving fans and net promoters, we're seeing growth already in those segments that we're servicing the most effectively. So it's been a very transformative 18-month period for the company, and I'm really excited about what's ahead for us as well.
That's great. Diane or Mary, any lessons learned from your efforts to mobilize SAP and AT&T around customer success? What's worked? What hasn't worked?
Well, we're such a small company, right? So
Right.
people ask me that all the time. It's like, how do you mobilize? We really try to just make it one light bulb at a time, right? We spend a lot of time talking with the teams and immersion workshops and really communicating and making sure they understand what this is all about. And I think the power of what we've done is really kind of bringing that human element back. It's actually, because the human heart hasn't changed, we try to really get people to think about this is a human being on the other end, just like you're having experiences all the time, so bringing that into bear. And then we also kind of began to get this view from the customer standpoint. So one of the challenges we have to our organization is if the customer were writing a business case about us and how we benefit their organization, what would that look like? Right? That's a different measure of success, right? How we fit into their processes, how we bring them value and save them time and effort and cost, that's our value, right? That's our customer value, and that's their success. It's how we fit into that. So we've really tried to shift the minds, if you will, about how we think about that value and what success means.
So we decided we needed to build a foundation a couple of years ago for wrapping our customer engagement strategy around a customer journey map. So we did that, and we thought, okay, now everyone will mobilize, and this is beautiful. But what happened was the functions were mobilizing in silos, and everyone was working toward improvements, but it was completely a disjointed experience for our customers still. And so what we did is created what we call a Customer Leadership Council, and we had a representative from every member of every function and board areas in our organization come together to share ideas and trends and process improvements. We share the voice of the customer. And then bi-weekly, all the senior leadership gets together and they make decisions and remove roadblocks. So our governance model, along with our CLC representation, allowed us to really mobilize quickly and execute faster. And we've made a lot of significant improvements just in the last year, specifically in our customer experience across the board.
Mary and I were talking about that and getting that not only at that governance level, but also within the organization when you're working on projects to make sure you have a cross-functional team in the room, because that richness of the journey and the back office processes and then what we call offstage things that happen is often it's not really the salesperson or support, it's what they're using and what they're given to go to market. So there's another level of that cross-functional collaboration that helps break down those silos and get you to be more agile as an organization, more holistic around what that experience is about.
I do just have one more thing to share from a lesson learned perspective where I think we really fell down is I think a lot of times we get caught up in really wanting to make change, and so we just go for it, and we don't tell our customers, we don't tell our employees, we don't tell our partners what we're doing, and so we throw these great things out there and they don't really get adopted or absorbed like we think they will. And so you end up taking a few steps backward. So my recommendation is definitely make sure you're putting a plan in place for the change management and the readiness of your ecosystem before you roll out these great things.
That's great. So staying on organization, one of the themes of the show has been how does customer success interact with sales and marketing? Because obviously customer success is the touch point for that account on a day-to-day basis, for years and years, and over time there's renewal decisions, upsell decisions. Nick talked this morning about kind of customer marketing and a whole new kind of domain and skill set around, how you market to your existing accounts versus, new accounts or new opportunities. How do your teams work with sales and marketing, and what are those touch points like? And again, what are some of the lessons learned, the things that work, the things that don't work, as you're managing the day-to-day customer interaction, but then you have the renewal and upsell decisions that come up? Diane, you want to start?
I think it goes back to what we just talked about. We try to make sure everybody has a voice and they see how they thread to the customer journey and how they thread to everybody else in the organization. Because how often if you get into a journey mapping session and people go, hey, we need to talk, marketing and support, right? We're putting this new campaign out. Well, we didn't know about it. It's just getting people to come together and really talk about what they're doing around the customer. So we try to really deflate that whole get out of my sandbox by saying, how do we improve that experience and what do we need to do in partnership to deliver on that? So I think it goes back to that whole collaboration and making sure everybody's in the room talking about it. It's like group therapy.
Well, we bring some data science to that conversation as well, and what we found to be very successful is finding and aligning and evangelizing internally the metrics that are most impactful to the business and the success of the business overall. So I mentioned earlier, as we started to run customer experience surveys and ask customers, would you recommend other people buy from us? We got some really actionable areas of things that we needed to work on and improve upon, and that gave the sales organization insight into where it could be more effective in cultivating long-term lifetime relationships with its customers. There's some interesting transformations for the sales organization at LinkedIn is that we historically have and continue to have a hunter-farmer model where we have one team that's accountable for identifying prospective clients and helping match products to their needs and bring them into our customer base, where they then hand them off to a relationship management team that cultivates over time. One of the most impactful things we were able to do is to correlate the data that says that customers who feel great about their relationship with us renew and grow at a much higher rate than customers that don't, which is obvious for everyone that's in this room. But as we're introducing a new organization in customer success with an explicit mission of teaching the company how to think more holistically around its customer base, we found those simple data points can be really impactful at getting people on board and aligned around the common goal. And we're seeing that play out in all of our segments right now. The more we focus on, in fact, we've framed it as a theme, what we call be successful and feel successful. Our overall charter is to make every customer be successful with our products. And we do that with standard ROI metrics and product return, et cetera. But then also that's insufficient. You need to be successful and then also feel successful about their relationship with us. And that simple framework has been really impactful at rallying marketing and sales and product all around that common cause.
And I would just, I would add on to that compensation does matter. So the compensation model that you have established really does kind of direct the interactions. We've tried a few different things, and it's going to be different variables depending on how big your company is and your engagement model. What works for us is to ultimately separate the renewal compensation and the ARR responsibility from the actual upsell. And we found our sales teams and our customer engagement teams and renewals team have worked very cohesively in understanding that compensation structure and where things need to get handed off. So that would be my advice. Compensation does definitely matter. In terms of marketing, we do have an adoption marketing department. They're actually dotted line to me, and it works fantastic. So they do all of our mass mailings and all of our advertisements for our one-to-many events, as an example. It works really well.
John?
So I think on the sales side, a lot of it sort of comes down to what I refer to as hand-to-hand combat, which is you have to engage directly one-on-one with the sales teams over time to really kind of build I think first of all, the confidence, the trust, and sort of the understanding of what your role is with the customer. And you can talk about it as much as you want. You can talk about it in new sales orientation. You can pitch to the company. But until people really engage directly, they don't really fully understand it, has kind of been my experience. And if I go back to early days, my early days at Box, we had the simple example is the shout outs from sales. So when notifications go out, and it was all about, from the salesperson, my sales engineer, my sales management, the exec who was involved or whatever, it was nothing about customer success. And if you fast forward to today and you look at any win notification, there's always one or more people from any part of customer success who's called out by the sales rep for being instrumental to them getting the deal done. Whether it was the CSM or a customer advisor or a support user services person, it doesn't matter. And that just happens through sort of repetitive engagement with those sales reps. So one of the things that we're in the process of doing now is aligning the CS org more closely with the sales org in terms of territories and ultimately verticals and so forth. And that just takes a while to work through. So that's on the sales side. Marketing, to be honest, is still pretty early days. There's not a lot of overlap yet, and I think as marketing starts to think more and more about upsell marketing, we're going to start to bump into each other a bit more in terms of what's the messaging we're trying to get to customers and users, and what's the messaging they're trying to get to them, and we're working through what that's going to look like.
That just reminds me of one comment I'd like to add to that, and I completely agree with that perspective, is we found stories to be really important. And so when we speak about how do you cross-functionally engage sales and marketing and product towards the goal of driving a healthier customer base, we found it wildly compelling and impactful to be able to share those types of stories, those mutual wins, those team wins, the customer wins, the areas where customers are winning awards on stage for their domain excellence powered by our solutions, the people who are getting promoted partially because they made a career bet on our technologies and we delivered on their requirements and their business objectives. Those are the stories that we can tell that humanize the value that we provide to our customers, and they resonate with all audiences in the company, but the executive audience, the functional audience, and so we're very deliberately now cultivating and curating a library of those success stories that we can use and reuse, and they're the stories you should see on banners at these types of events where you're celebrating the successes of your customers. We found them really impactful.
Yeah, that's great. That makes sense. So let's switch gears for a second. How do you each define ROI or business value for customer success in your companies? Is it a financial metric around renewals or upsells? Is it a product metric around engagement? Is it a customer advocacy metric around the number of references or product usage or engagement? What are the 1, 2, 3 key metrics you guys use at the end of every month, every quarter, every year to know we did our job and we're kind of at plan, above plan? What do those look like? Eric, do you want to start?
Yeah, and we're evolving as we evolve the metrics, but there's basically 3 categories that we'll look at, that we do look at, and we're getting more granular about how we look at it. The first is we look at renewals, and we look at the inverse of churn, you can think about it, but we look at how much are we driving incremental renewals in a portfolio of accounts based upon our investment in customer success teams and functions overall. And so that renewal, the incremental renewal rate as an ROI to our investment is something that we look at internally. Also internally, we look at Net Promoter Score as a leading indicator for renewals. How are we doing making people feel good about the investments that they're making as well? That takes a little bit more time because with Net Promoter Score surveys, your sample size needs to come back large enough for you to action it. So that's in process of being rolled out. And then from a customer perspective, we mostly anchor around impacted hires. And what we find is that the people who are what we call impacted hires is a measure of what percentage of a customer's hires were influenced and enabled by the products that they use from Talent Solutions at LinkedIn. And that is a proxy for us of how much value they're getting out of the investment that they're making in us. And so it's those 3 metrics, the customer metric, how they feel about their metric with Net Promoter Score, and then how that translates to renewals are the 3 that we look at.
So we have pretty much everything you listed as kind of our top level. So at a company level, the most important one for my team is the net retention number. And Dan Levin, our COO, talked about the importance of that to the public company kind of valuation that we have. But at the team level, and talking specifically about CSMs, it's adoption, retention, expansion, and referenceability of customers are kind of the 4 big things we focus on. And I think there's the gap really is you talk about this ROI within the company. I think the real question is what's the ROI to the customer, right? And I think the challenge for us with our product specifically, it's this very horizontal product for use for all sorts of different use cases. And I love that LinkedIn metric of saying the impact you've had to their company. It's hard for us to do that, right? Because people may be using us for something as simple as replacing FTP servers, or they might be building these entire collaborative workflows around our product. And it's, we haven't sort of found the holy grail of how do we figure out how much value the customer's actually getting from our product in those various use cases. So if you guys have ideas on how to do that, let me know.
I think ours is more of a hierarchy. We have so many different products and services, and the way our customers are so different. So we really try to build a hierarchy of how everything kind of feeds together. And we're very specific about measures versus metrics versus the business value. So we talk about measures and really what's happening. The metrics are more the outcome of what we want to have happen, and the business value, of course, is both to AT&T and to the customer. I think one of the things we do is really try to thread those things together so we can see the impact. And when we pull this lever, is that going to thread up to that? Because people have a hard time with Net Promoter Score. It's like, how do I move that, right? So we try to give them here's the things that contribute to that and how they kind of thread up to those high levels. And we're in kind of a transition with how we measure and all we measure, but we're really trying to get that model down so people know what they're shooting for, right? What their target is, that they can impact. It's hard to say I'm going to impact NPS today when I walk in the front door, but I can definitely reduce the time that it takes for me to get a customer an answer, right? So we try to make those measures and metrics really relative to where the person is in the organization.
Great. So last year we rolled out what we call our customer health framework. There's about 15 variables that we measure from the customer lens. Things like engagement, adaptability, which is consumption of the newest technology, adoption, business outcomes, or business value. We correlate that back with our business metrics of renewal, our referenceability, upsell, and also our NPS scores. We found pretty significant differences in a lot of the variables, but the main ones really are engagement, adaptability, and adoption. So those would be the three I would keep in mind. And we're going to continue to evolve it. But so if you guys find great things that you're measuring, I'd love to hear them as well. And you guys are doing some great stuff. We can collaborate.
Great. So quick update to the audience. In about 4 or 5 minutes or so, we're going to open up the microphone. We'd like to allocate the last 15 minutes or so for questions from the audience. So don't be shy. This is a very nice group of panelists. So please just think about your questions, and we'll have microphones going around in a couple minutes. Where have you guys found your best talent? There's been some discussion about what are the skill sets that comprise great customer success kind of contributors, individual contributors, and great customer success leaders. What are some of the lessons you guys have learned, good and bad, mistakes you've made, and also successes you've had in hiring your talent?
You mean hiring talent for sales and support, or hiring talent for people who can champion the customer success or customer experience? That's kind of two different pieces and parts. What we do internally is really try to find our internal champions. There's people in this room are a lot of nurturers. A lot of people are really a certain personality type, if you will. So when we run our immersion workshops or we're talking with individuals in the organization, we watch for those people who are really come up to us afterwards and start talking about it, and they're excited about what it is, and we gravitate them and bring them into our champion network, and they become our spokespeople out in the field. So I don't know if it's so much as hiring from the outside as it is really finding those champions internally that just kind of get it, and we leverage them very highly and have them share. Storytelling is a great way. If you don't have storytelling and change management skills, get them, because they're really relevant and helpful. So we hire mostly from the inside, especially for what we're trying to transition toward.
So we hire from, I think, all over the place. We have university graduates that come directly into various roles in customer success. We focus a lot on internal mobility, which I'll maybe talk about a little bit later. But we found people from all sort of walks of life, people who've been account managers in the past, who've been CSMs in other companies, who've done nothing, people from the nonprofit world who've done nothing in the customer success arena. And I think what you're fundamentally looking for, the way I always describe it is people in our case who sort of get technology, they sort of fundamentally understand it, they can explain it to other people, and they actually are driven to help, right? So that there's a service mentality that's very innate to them as a person, because it's just one of those things, if you don't actually enjoy doing service, it's a horrible job to do, right? You have to like it. And we've just been successful all across the board. And what's amazing is some of our younger people and some of the account situations or customer situations we put them in, and they've just really thrived. So I think you just hire really, really smart and driven and service-oriented people, and you let them go.
Anything you want to add?
I was just going to say we found that hiring people with domain expertise for our solutions in particular. Be curious if you guys have seen this as well, but we have HR solutions, procurement solutions, sales CRM solutions, and when we have tried to put individuals in with different backgrounds who can't speak the language to the individuals they interact with, the process owners and the executive team, they have a hard time really being strategic. But if we bring in the domain experts who we can teach the technology to, we've had a great success in doing that.
Yeah, I had a similar experience, and I'm going to use another. I'm using a lot of threes today. We basically hire on 3 dimensions, and on the domain expertise front, when I started about a year ago, one of the things to speak to the rapid evolution of customer success as a theme in a career and industry. I received a couple of hundred invites before I started, connection requests on LinkedIn from people that were eventually going to be part of the organization. And they broke down into 2 camps. There was we're really pleased that we're now mobilizing more consistently around this theme. We realize it's important for our success and our customer success. Welcome on board. And the other theme was, we thought we were here to provide domain expertise. What is this about customer success? And that's not why I signed up to come work here. And I took a half dozen calls my first couple weeks in the job to explain to people that our products are selling to the domain of talent acquisition, and we sell products to that domain. And to make our customers successful, we need to understand the domain in order to actually show them how to leverage our products. And that domain knowledge and customer success knowledge were not, in fact, exclusive. In fact, they were quite complementary and quite complementary necessary. And so that was interesting to me that we had to go through that. I spent way more time than I expected having that conversation with the org as we got there. And over the past year, that's dramatically evolved to now where people are coming to us specifically because, in fact, we have people coming to us from our own internal talent acquisition team because they want to get involved in helping our customers use our products and scale. So it's been a great transformation. But we look in 3 axes. We look in domain expertise, folks that understand talent acquisition and what problems our customers are facing. Folks that have a great customer advocacy acumen, that understand how to talk to and work with and cultivate customers. And then 3, we sell technology at the end of the day. We need people that have some technology acumen as well that can help combine those 2 things. So that my Venn diagram has those 3 intersecting pools, and it's been great to see how rapidly the organization has really evolved towards that.
That's great. Well, let's open up the questions to the audience. We've got, it looks like a couple of people going around with microphones. Anybody want to be brave and ask? Oh, here we go. Yes, there's somebody in the front.
Hi, my name is Vanessa, and I'm coming from a SaaS company in the financial technology realm. And my question for the 4 of you is, do any of you own upsells and cross-sells? And if so, do you have a quota that you have to meet in forecasts, or is that still with the sales team?
So in our case at Box, we don't own upsell or cross-sell transactions, but we have a small sort of incentive program for CSMs to help identify those opportunities, sort of get qualification notes for them, and then pass them over to the sales team. So the idea is not to turn, in our case, CSMs into salespeople, but have them listening for the kinds of things that might indicate there's an opportunity in the account.
We don't have that as part of our organization, but we consider ourselves a Sherpa to help connect the dots, if you will, to what's happening, what information can we get to the salespeople that gives them more information to act on that. So we kind of take an indirect role contributing to that.
We have consciously chosen not to, and for now, and we will eventually have more ownership of upsell and cross-sell. But one of the challenges that we're looking to manage through is, as we navigate from a sales org to a sales and success org in balance, is our customers had told us historically that they felt like every time we called them, someone was trying to sell them something. And what we realized is we needed to establish a role in our company that was a non-sales, non-commissioned, non-quota function whose only purpose in life was to ensure our customers were getting value out of what they had already purchased. And so we're incubating the success function, the success team members around retention only as a proxy for value. We will eventually get to a point where identifying upsell and cross-sell opportunities will be part of that mix, but I think we're probably 2 years away from getting to that point.
Our team can sell seat expansion, but not product upsell. So those 2 things are distinct. But other than that, the renewal and the sale of new product, very separate.
Hi, question for you. I've heard a lot of great things about new positions in customer success, positions like customer success operations, customer success marketing. And one of the things that I'm sort of struggling with in my mind is pulling those resources in-house. Are we doing that because it's a factor of having more control and having it be easier than trying to influence just marketing and just operations to have a customer success focus rather than requiring a dedicated role for that? And so I just wanted to get your take on where's the balance and like what level of influence do you need to be able to really have those functions be core to the entire organization versus resources specifically inside a customer success organization?
So I'll take this one. So you all probably are well aware in the cloud there's really two selling motions. There's selling in and then there's selling out, which is the usage and adoption. Both of those selling motions do require support, right? So if you think about renewal and retention needing a parallel sales ecosystem, if you will, it doesn't need to necessarily belong, under you, but you've got to have the right structure in place to support it. So you need the adoption marketing, you need the operations. The operations is so critical right now because of the insights that we can gain. And I know you didn't ask this, but I'm going to answer it anyway, which is I think where we're going is to a predictive
I still
state.
have time. I'll get the last question.
Okay, well, I'm going to answer it anyway. Getting to a predictive state. And without the CS operations, I think it's going to be really hard to get there. So my perspective is it doesn't have to belong to you, but you need to make a case for it and make sure you have the structure in place to support what you need.
I think in my experience, my personal bias is I want to own as little as possible. And if I can have other organizations support and do my job for me, I want them to do that. It's good for me. I get more time off. I think one of the challenges is in a growth environment where a company is growing and growing on multiple dimensions, it is sometimes hard to protect the investments that you need in different functions, be it operations or marketing or productization, around the service offers and the success offers that you need to do in order to hit your objectives. So ultimately, it depends upon what those objectives are and what support is required to deliver them. And then my lens that I apply to that is, okay, with knowing that that's the support and infrastructure we require to execute, which piece of these do we really need to own organizationally as part of customer success? And where can we better leverage the engines elsewhere in the company that are really good at what they do and that we could bring into our objectives? And that'll always be my bias, where I'm confident we can make that work, and where I'm not 100% confident, I might incubate some function internally and then look to outplace it when the time is right in the business.
Yeah, I think it's creating that organizational alignment. I think having a goal for what you want the organization to be like, and having a change management plan, and a RACI chart, right? It sounds a little, where it's a little bit too tactical, but to be honest with you, those departments really want to know how they're supposed to contribute, how they're supposed to operate, what's the process to get things approved, right? They kind of need that structure. In a big organization like ours, of course, smaller, agile organizations, it's still important because people just want to know how this is all going to work together. Show me the cogs, show me the process, show me some of the sausage making so I can know where I fit and what I need to do to contribute and where I contribute to, right? So I think defining that for the organization is key, and that we've done it really from the bottom up. We've had the organization kind of help us with what that looks like, what works for you, what support do you need from us. Again, we're just a Sherpa. I always think in our roles that eventually we should work ourselves out of a job because everybody should be thinking this way naturally. Until that happens, we need to help them do that. So,
I don't think I have anything to add.
Great. All right. A man, a few words. Other questions from the audience? Oh, here we go. Go for it.
Yeah, so I have one about partners. So partners can be very instrumental to the success of our customers, whether they're resellers or systems integrators or VARs. And in the expansion of the role of customer success, I guess keeping it in 3 areas, how have your organizations, or have your organizations started to, and how have they started to address things like, 1, the enablement and training of partners, 2, the identification of which partners are going to be strategic to making your customers successful. And in the case of resellers, how do you and how have your organizations maintained some degree of control of your engagement models and how your resellers are engaging with your customers on an ongoing basis?
So this is a very challenging area, as I'm sure you can imagine, in that the reseller may or may not want to have and own the ongoing relationship with the customer. In some cases, they may just want to do the transaction and move on. In other cases, part of the value that they're bringing is that they've got the long-term relationship with the customer. And what we've done so far at Box is we've sort of defaulted to letting the partner tell us how they want us to engage with the customer. And by and large, that works. Where it gets tricky is where you feel like the partner's actually not engaging the way that you want them to, right? And at the end of the day, what we're trying to protect is our recurring revenue at the same time that the partner is as well. And so we may push back, and we have in cases sort of pushed back on the overall relationship we have with a partner or the reseller around how we expect them to engage with our customers. What I'd love to see in every reseller agreement is some expectations around the service levels they're going to give to the customer if they're going to provide that first line of, whether it's CSMs or support or whatever it is, that we can hold them to in order for them to remain inside of our partner program. But we're still sort of working towards that.
I would agree, and in the SaaS model, like in preceding models, the partner ecosystem is hugely important for global scale, your ability to scale your reach and your ability to support. And I think the core issue comes down to quality control, and how are you able to ensure that when customers engage through a partner, be it a reseller or a service partner, they're getting the right level of support to be successful with your product so that they can choose to stay a customer with you in perpetuity. And that often comes with tiering partners, with partner criteria, with quality control, with CSAT feedback. But that level of quality control to me is core to my mind in ensuring that when customers engage through partners, they have a great experience in doing that.
It's hard to control that second generation experience. You're absolutely right, but we haven't done this at AT&T. We're just developing it. But in other companies I've worked for, we see three constituents: our partners, our employees, and our external customers and their external customers, right? So there's that second generation. But all three of those, we kind of turn the same lens on them because they're all very critical to that experience. And if we don't make sure we're doing the same thing for them that we do our customers and they're successful, then we're not helping the organization to do that. So in other companies, I've seen them really pull those three things in and really have that same lens on those three groups of customers, because they really are our partners.
And I echo all of this and would just add, we make our best practices and our enablement available to our partners as well, so we encourage them to take advantage of our lessons learned. And in fact, last week we just rolled out some great training. So I think they're hungry for it. We can't mandate that they do it our way, but I think if you position what works and what you've learned, they seem to be receptive to take it on. So it's not scalable to be able to get to a level with your indirect model that you're building direct. So it's important to share those lessons learned.
As this is such a growing field too, one thing to think about is helping your customers, helping your vendors become more customer-centric themselves, right? Teaching them a little bit about what you're doing because they're struggling with the same thing that we are, and all of us are trying to grow in that organization. So we actually have a few people who help consult with our partners and our larger customers about what is customer experience and why is it important, right? So teaching them a little bit of how to cook and eat your own cooking, so to speak. So.
Just one more comment. We just added our indirect to our NPS surveys as well, so we're starting to gather that data, which I think will get some really great insights to be able to apply to this exact scenario.
Any final questions from the audience? We have time for one more. If not, I'm happy to ask one. Going once, going twice. Okay, so final kind of lightning round question, guys. It's a two-part question. One is, what was the single biggest mistake you made as a customer success leader? And two, what is your prediction for 2015? This is what you partially answered this one already, but I'm not going to let you off the hook. So biggest mistake you've ever made as a customer success leader and prediction for the next year. You go for it, yeah, go for it.
Well, I think I touched on both of these, but I'll just reiterate. I think our biggest failure was definitely rolling out what has turned out to be a fantastic engagement model, but not doing it in a way that we prepared our partners and our employees and our customers. So that was a huge lesson learned. Take a step back, do your change management, make sure you're ready. My prediction is absolutely that we're moving to predictive analytics. I think the faster we can get there, the better we're going to make our customers successful, the more value we're going to bring, the more upsell, the more renewal, just the more happy everyone's going to be. So that's my prediction.
Great.
I would say from a lessons learned perspective, for me, I dramatically underestimated the change management aspect of taking an existing culture and overlaying a new mindset to mobilize around customer success. And that was, as someone who spent 11 years thinking about customer success thematically, I would see a Net Promoter Score survey and know that, oh, we have to go do these 3 things. And were I to go back a year, I would be evangelizing those stories and those anecdotes and that data much earlier, much more broadly, at much higher executive levels than I did coming in. And so going back, we just would have accelerated that a few quarters. From a success story and what we see, I think in what we see coming into 2015, I think this room will be 3 times the size next year. I think it's going to be a lot easier for us all to hire, because we're going to have more people entering customer success as a field and knowing that they're seeking out careers in customer success, and we'll be delineating applicant pools a little bit differently than we have been. And I'm really excited to see what topics we're talking about next year and how these have all evolved. I think we're early days in this evolution, and it's exciting to see the Chief Customer Officer really becoming mainstream.
I think I made a lot of mistakes over a long career of doing this, but I think I ditto the change management piece. Can't explain that enough. But I think it was also focusing on really being operational with how to kind of find and fix, I call it, and not really working on the more strategic foundational things and giving people a framework to put that into. So ditto on all of that. Yes, I think this is going to be a much growing field. It's been interesting to watch it over the last 10 years or so before it was the cool thing, right, to do. But I think also employee engagement is becoming really critical to this, because if you can't really bring the employees along, including your leaders, by the way, and have them understand what you're trying to accomplish and why, and build that consensus, it makes it much more difficult. So I see that as really being something in the next year companies will start focusing on. It'll be a whole new methodology around that that we've applied to customers.
So there's a big chunk of my team sitting in the front row here, and I think they could actually give you a really long list of all the mistakes I've made.
Throwing things at you, because that's what I.
Yeah. You guys want to jump in here? I think I've made tons. Actually, if my wife was here, she could probably double the list that these guys come up with. But I think if I had to think back on it, we dabbled with a variable comp plan for a while. And I don't think I've reached the conclusion that having a variable comp plan is a bad idea. It's just the way it evolved over time. It wound up being a lot of effort and a lot of headache and a lot of angst, and it didn't actually drive different behavior than I think we would have probably gotten anyway. So I probably would do that differently, and we're still dabbling with the idea of doing that, and we'd just structure it differently. In terms of predictions, this I think is a pretty obvious one if you just kind of look around, and that is we are, I believe, entering a war for talent for customer success, right? And I think the great thing about this conference and what we're seeing just sort of with all the thought leadership is that this is a career. I think we're really clearly seeing that, and every company who's got a subscription model, a recurring revenue model, a renewal model, whatever business, software or not, is recognizing that we need to have people like this as part of our teams, right? And we're seeing this in spades. Just there's a lot of competition for our people and the experience that they have, and I think we're all going to continue to see that regardless of where we are.
Did you say that's your team over here?
Yes, and I love you guys.
Oh, Mary's going to try and recruit them.
And
mine are over here, but I'm not going to say
John will
who they
recruit them. All right, well, guys, thank you
and
so
we're
much.
hiring.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. We're all hiring. Guys, this is great. Thank you so much. Lot of fantastic wisdom and insight. So thanks for your time. So everybody, please give us a round of applause here for the panel.